Gehet mir Fóill. Welcome everyone, my name is Darren Kuzma and this is another webinar of Mind the CRAIC, your online life hacks. Today we are continuing the series on communication with the title being Repair Misunderstandings. We did do a webinar with the same title previously, but I'm going to add to that information in that last webinar with what I present today. Now before I get started, I just want to let you all know that I am actually live here on a Zoom chat for anyone that is following me. If you know where you get to your reactions button or to your chat, I put a little message in there, you can wave, give me some sort of acknowledgement. It's great to know that you're listening, that you're ready, and you are in touch with me, engaged. That's good. If you're not on Zoom, but you're watching on Instagram or on Facebook or on YouTube, you can also pass comments to me. Just put them into the comments section. And I have a host, Michelle, who's following on the other platforms, and she will be able to relay that to me here live in Zoom so that I can engage with you. If you want to share a story or something on that particular subject that we're dealing with, misunderstandings, or if you would like to have me answer a question that you have, or just give some feedback, it'd be great to hear from you. We are doing it in this format as a webinar rather than just online video content, though it will appear as that later. Doing it as a webinar so that you can engage live, ask questions, all that sort of thing. So please take me up on that if you have anything at all that you want to contribute. Okay, so going right along. In the previous webinar on repairing misunderstandings, I looked at the concept of avoiding misunderstandings in the first place. And the main way to achieve that, we're looking at all different levels from interpersonal relationships, business relationships, all that sort of thing, is making sure that as a basis of understanding that the words that are used, the symbols, you could say, the words that are used to transfer the information are known by both parties. If you start using fancy words to describe things, or if you're in a specialist field and you're dealing with someone who's not in a specialist field, using your specialist terms to describe things that you're used to, whereas someone else might not be accustomed to hearing those things, you're bound to create misunderstandings. So that was one of the first points that we covered, is try not to create misunderstandings in the first place. Okay, and then we looked at the point of, let's say, duplication. So you can give the right information across, you can say the right things, use the right words, use words that are understandable, but for whatever reason, they don't get received at the other end in the correct way. Either that person's mind was off somewhere else wondering about what they were having for dinner, perhaps you're using some other sort of parts to your communication that upset or concerned or confused that person, so it wasn't necessarily the words, and we're going to look at some of those points. And a lot of the times when things are spoken and not recorded, in someone's mind, the recollection of the information that was exchanged can certainly be altered. You know, if you're in business, or actually even if you're not, you're talking with someone, and on a hour-to-hour basis, you're either making agreements or making plans for the future. And let's say that you're making plans with someone to meet them for lunch at 1 p.m. And then you also are talking to someone else who says that they want a proposal completed by 12 p.m. And if you have neither of those things written down in your mind, for whatever reason, the movie time or the lunchtime meeting with your friend can sit in your mind more solid because perhaps you were looking forward to it and you didn't like this other thing. There's a lot of factors, but you can then, in your mind, recall, when did I need to finish that proposal? Oh, that's right, 1 p.m. just before I go to lunch. So when things aren't written down and there's no record for you to refer back to, the who, the what, the why, when, how, all those details can actually get jumbled up, misunderstood, and therefore cause misunderstandings. So that was another point we went over. We also looked at in that webinar considering who you are dealing with when you are communicating, because there are certainly some people, you know, that have harmful intentions towards you, or they wish you some ill in some way, or they wish to take advantage of you or take something from you unfairly, and therefore are misleading you, misdirecting you in some way to try and create a situation where either you make a mistake and then they can complain about it and say, you didn't do this, I asked for this, I had it here, etc., and then through some sort of bullying kind of reduce you into submission so that you actually have to give in to their wishes and do things for them. And we looked at that. There are certainly types of people that you shouldn't really associate with on a common everyday habit that you should perhaps look out for, and choose your relationships. Just as a note there, the next series of webinars we're going to do is on relationships, interpersonal relationships, how to deal with family and friends. We're coming up to Christmas. There's going to be a lot of people that you're going to deal with or need to communicate with. And we look at repairing relationships or how to improve relationships and all the different things that L. Ron Hubbard has to say about that. So that's just an aside. So coming back to the type of person, in the previous webinar, we discussed a little bit about that, and we will go into more detail in the other webinars coming up on the subject of relationships. Okay, then we also looked at when you have made a mistake or there has been some misunderstanding, what do you do? Which of course was the basis of the webinar, repair misunderstandings. So looking at how misunderstanding can be broken down or how it can occur that you have a misunderstanding, that putting understanding back or repairing that misunderstanding has a lot to do with the golden rule type principle. Try to do to others as you would want them to do to you, sort of thing. And perhaps considering it also from a very virtuous position where you regard the other person that you're dealing with, that you may have made a mistake with, as perhaps family, in that your survival or their survival are, in some ways equal. That if they are not doing well as a result of the misunderstanding that perhaps you caused, that by you dealing with them and treating them perhaps as an equal or with such importance that whatever damage that occurred with their survival that was created through your, participation in the communication, that you do things to make up that damage, and don't just sort of brush things off and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, or this, it didn't make sense to me, well, it's your fault." And that's the worst thing, to blame and justify and point the finger in the other direction, because then you never learn yourself, and you're also making other people responsible for perhaps the failures in your life. If you get into that as a habit in life, blaming other people for any mistake that occurs, you're not taking responsibility for yourself. So anyway, that was a principle that we covered there in terms of survival, helping the other people that you deal with survive well, and having lots of people around you that you deal with surviving well is good for your survival. So making up the damage for any misunderstandings, and we covered and ended off pretty much at those points in that last webinar. So I would like to take that a little bit further now, and aside from words or the details, it had to be delivered at this time or at this point, these were the contents, this was the description, all that sort of thing. There are other components of communication that can lead to misunderstandings other than the words, the details, etc., and that sort of thing. So I wanted to go over some of those. And if you have any examples of different ways that you've caused misunderstandings or that you've had someone misunderstand you, I'd definitely like to hear from you. So go ahead, put that into the Zoom chat that I'm in here, or comments on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, that sort of thing. Okay, so communication can be understood, you could say, simply because of the fact that there are different people that you're dealing with that all have different methods, modes, ways of communicating. Again, this is aside from the vocabulary, the understanding of words, all these other parts of communication. I'm going to give you an example. Volume. I don't know how many times you've had to deal with someone that you have thought was either rude or trying to bully or patronize or making you feel less in some way because of the way that they talk. And I certainly have experienced more than one or two people that have spoken very loudly at me. And if you have an understanding for why someone can speak loudly, yes, it certainly can be because they're trying to bully you. You know, they walk into the store or they walk into the location and say, I bought this item and it's defective. You know, there could be anger going with it as well. Or, where's the manager? I'd like to see the manager. That sort of thing. Now, do remember that some people that are speaking with a very high volume, whilst they might be angry, they may also be hard of hearing. someone who is, getting on in the years and whose hearing is starting to deteriorate a little bit, they can't hear themselves as well as they used to. So what naturally happens is that they quite often can start to raise their voice. And that's particularly if it's starting to occur around, if their hearing loss is beginning to occur. As time goes on and someone deals with that, they're a little bit more. But think of that. Anytime that you have had someone with great volume, speak at you, do you feel naturally liking that person, or feeling, oh, that's great, I'm really glad to hear that you're shouting at the top of your voice that you need my manager, that's fantastic. It usually doesn't come along that way. But if you have more of an appreciation of the different reasons that someone might raise their voice, then certainly that can lead to less misunderstanding, because it could be that person might be deaf. So again, and you're going to see this is in the crux of the handling for all of these things, is that more communication is the solution. So how would you handle that? Well, someone's speaking very loudly. Sir, I didn't realize you were so frustrated. I noticed that you're speaking quite loudly. Is there something else wrong? I'm right here. Just, simply asking a question. Now, if someone is angry, they might actually detest that sort of communication from you. But more communication, polite and communication that has a lot of, we're going to use the word affinity, because I'm going to come back to this thing called the ARC triangle. A discovery that L. Ron Hubbard made is a relationship between three things: affinity, reality, and communication. So you can enhance any one of these three factors by improving any one of those three sides of the triangle. So you can improve communication and you'll increase your affinity for someone or your reality with them. And you can increase your affinity for someone, you'll improve the communication reality, and so on. So this three-sided triangle is really a great key to improving anything. But communication is definitely the most important part. So anytime there is a misunderstanding that could be looming, hanging, about to occur, more communication is the answer, not less. If you don't understand why someone is speaking loudly, rather than, shrinking back from it or being worried about it, politely ask. Yes, that person might be antisocial. They might be very upset and might be wanting to create an effect on the entire store or the rest of the people in the restaurant, wherever it might be, just so that they can show that they're, the alpha male, or wanting to do, get their refund or whatever it might be. More communication, not less, is the answer there. Okay, so volume is one of the ways that someone can be misunderstood, not necessarily intending to, but by, as I mentioned. Okay, another thing is velocity or speed. Now, there are a lot of unspoken visual cues. How fast someone is speaking, how slow someone is speaking, their tone of voice, that goes along with volume as well. And what you need to understand there is a little bit that human emotions, again, discovery from L. Ron Hubbard, is the emotional tone scale. Now, a scale is basically a range, something that expresses or shows a range of things, perhaps going from one end of a scale to the other. Like you could say on a scale from 1 to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's a top and a bottom end of that scale. So in exactly the same way, L. Ron Hubbard discovered that there is actually an emotional scale called the emotional tone scale for various reasons. But various emotions, negative emotions, right down to the bottom at apathy, grief, fear, that sort of thing, coming up into sort of anger and antagonism, boredom, interest, and these sort of things, and then high interest and enthusiasm and that sort of thing. So you can see that there's a range of these different emotions, perhaps going from negative to kind of positive. So people can express their emotions in a communication using certain words, and the emotion that you get from that, or the extra attached meaning to what they have said in their communication, can often give you a misunderstanding. And in the webinar that I did yesterday with Devontae, we were talking about all these different methods of communication nowadays, between text, social media, email, all those sort of messaging services and things like that, which is just written communication, to then over the phone, and then perhaps, voice video calls, and then in person. There's another scale of communication, you could say, in that way. That when you don't understand a person well, maybe you haven't met them many times, and they might be stuck in a certain emotional level, and you're trying to make a sale with someone, Perhaps you're an assistant in a store or something, wherever it might be. You're trying to sell something or let someone know that they can get some sort of offer or avail of your service, whatever it might be. And that person can actually be stuck in an emotional tone called monotony, where their tone level in their voice or their speed doesn't actually change. You know, you've seen some people like this. Hello, how are you today? Yes, I'm fantastic. It was amazing. I had such a good time at the movies. Oh, and the dinner was really good too. So that sort of person, if they're stuck in that emotional tone level, which they can become stuck at, it would very much confuse you as to what does that person mean. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you very much for that 10% discount. You know, you don't know whether or not, is this person any closer to the sale or are they now pushing me because they want something else? So an understanding of these emotional tones and how they speak can allow you to have more understanding for a person and what they're trying to say to you. So going on to speed, one thing can be that some people actually speak really, really fast. And it doesn't matter what they're saying, they really sound excited. So if I increase the speed of what I'm speaking about, then I actually think that my emotional tone is a bit higher. Because if I start speaking slowly, even though I'm really excited, it certainly doesn't seem like it, does it? So that point on volume and how quickly some people speak or how slowly some people speak can add up into all sorts of computations and calculations in your mind about what does this person really mean? They're saying to me certain things that sound like that's what they mean, but their emotional expression and their speed perhaps with which they're talking to me really indicates something else. So an understanding of that emotional tone scale will actually help you understand the communications that you're receiving, as well as then allow you to adjust and make more clear the communications you are giving. Yesterday we spoke about some of the pitfalls of written communication. And I referred back to this ARC triangle in that part of understanding is not just communication, not just the words, it's also that affinity level. So affinity being the degree of likeness, perhaps the emotion, how much you want someone to be close to you, what sort of affinity do you have, or how much you want them to be away from you, which would be definitely a low level of affinity. No affinity being, of course, you don't want them around at all and you don't want to receive any communication. So you can kind of see at zero affinity, there would be zero communication. You got the idea. So we're talking about these written forms of communication and then the almost natural development of emojis, which makes sense. Now, L. Ron Hubbard discovered the ARC triangle, this affinity reality communication triangle, before texting and before emojis ever came about. But you notice that when texting first began, that you yourself, when you were conveying a message, you know, typing something out on your tiny little Nokia, you know, whatever it was, phone, which you had all these tiny little buttons that if you had man thumbs that you couldn't really do very well. So you had all this texting going on and you're like, I'm responding to a message here and I don't know whether they know I'm happy about it. Oh, so let me do colon, close parentheses, you know, close brackets. That looks a smiley face. Great. So then the person reading it gets the text and then they get a little smiley face at the end and then they can say, oh, they're happy about that. So that affinity, that emotional component of things, when you understand where the person is coming from, you have an understanding of the emotional tone scale. And when you add emotion to the communication that you're giving, then you can improve the understanding, improve your communication through adding that into it. So anyway, we covered that yesterday in a webinar, and that is something that you could use to improve understanding. Okay, so after those things, there was body language. So in addition to body language, in addition to those things, in body language, you have movements and motions. And perhaps they can be distracting. Perhaps people can be trying to be interesting. You might, if you've watched some of these webinars, notice that I use my hands a bit. Maybe I should just keep them down here so that you can understand what I'm saying, or concentrate on my facial expressions rather than looking at my hands waving around and that sort of thing. But the point being that body language is another thing that can convey a message. And understanding and knowing what body language means or how it influences communication can also help with understanding. Now, an important part out of all of these things that I've mentioned, in terms of velocity, volume, emotion, and body language, is that you need to check your own experience. And when I say check, I mean reset or examine and make sure it's not influencing. Obviously, there are important parts, or there is value to using your past experience to judge what is happening in front of you, but you may have experienced before that you see someone instantly that you're about to communicate with, whether they be in the room, whether you're introduced in a group of people and you see someone and they're dressed a certain way, their hair is done a certain way, maybe they're wearing a certain perfume, or their eyes are a little bit beady, or they have a certain pair of glasses, that someone in your past that you have a mental image picture of, a memory of, and you had a bad experience with that person. So instantly, what does that do? It flavors any communication that you receive from that person. Kind of like with a bit of wariness and a bit of, is that person actually well-intentioned? Because I saw someone like that who tried to do me in for a blah, 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 blah. I'm going to be very careful with that person. And without you realizing, you're like, right, in acknowledging that person's communication. So you perhaps could be giving a wrong message to that person when they're entirely social, wanting you to do well, help your business, help you survive better and do well in life. So this aspect of your own, and I guess usually negative experience in the past, is a thing that if you bring it into your current communications, it can further create misunderstandings. So one unfortunate liability of that is that you don't carry to the front of your mind and with you at all times every single person you've had a bad relationship with, every single person that has, done you harm or wished you ill, that sort of thing. You don't carry with you all the time, and you're not conscious of it. So the problem actually is the way the mind works is a lot of those things are hidden beneath your awareness, way back there from some past time, that it still can influence you. Okay, so that's just something to remember. You can find out more about that in this book, Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought, which I will speak about more in just a moment. But notwithstanding all of those ways that you can misunderstand someone, or how these different influences can cause you to have misunderstandings, the solution relates to this ARC triangle and the principle that L. Ron Hubbard writes about in this book. And he says, communication is the solvent for all things. The solvent, the thing that solves, finds a solution for, etc. So, by communicating and asking questions, receiving answers, getting questions, having questions asked of you, and you giving truthful and honest answers, that vehicle of communication and exchanging realities. What do you mean by that? Well, when I said this is exactly what I meant. Let's put it down in writing. More communication, not less, is the solution to repairing misunderstandings. So no matter what kind of misunderstanding that you have had, more communication, not less. Okay, so I'm going to just ask Michelle, who's following along now in the other platforms. I know there's a little time lag, so I want to give you a bit of a chance. If you have any questions or any originations, things you'd like to say about misunderstandings you've had, perhaps an example scenario of how it would need to be handled, go ahead, put that into the comment section. Michelle can transfer that over to me. So just while you get a moment to think of that, great, I'm just going to check with Michelle here. Sending her a message across. So if you have any comments or questions, I'll check back in just before I end off. Okay, so communication is the solvent for all things, more communication, not less. So let's go to some this ARC triangle again. Okay, affinity, reality, communication. And those three things together combined are understanding. So if you had a misunderstanding and you're going to communicate more, then how do you use A and R to repair a misunderstanding? Well, let's look at that. How could you increase the affinity in a communication? Well, you could quite simply, through emotion in your voice, express, listen, I'm really sorry. I do want to make it up to you. Please tell me what it is that we can do. Your expression in your face, the tone in your voice, those sort of things can express to another person that you do wish and intend for a repair to actually occur. Now, looking at that definition of affinity, remember I said it's a degree of liking. How much you would like to have someone or desire to have someone in your space. How survival it would be to have them close to you, and how survival or otherwise, non-survival it would be to have them further away from you. So if you've had a misunderstanding perhaps in writing or perhaps over the phone, what are these different levels on this I just made up scale of communication? So writing didn't work, there's been some misunderstanding. Okay, pick up the phone. You're going to add your tone of voice, you're going to add volume, you're going to add speed, you can convey emotion through these different things. So pick up the phone, repair the misunderstanding that way. How does that work? It works because you're increasing the affinity. Okay, if that didn't work, great. Have a video call. See facial expressions. See if that person is actually paying attention. Oh yeah, I really wanted to fix up that botched order that we had. Sorry, what was that? Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that we're really sorry about that thing that we did. And yeah, we'll fix it up for you. Okay, that's fine. I'm just going to call. How is that going to look? If you have a video call like that, you can see that the person is not really intending to make up the damage or repair the damage. So that different level, going above that, go and make a personal visit. These days, perhaps it's not so easy, but if you have a misunderstanding, a face-to-face repair is often the best. Cup of tea, sit down for a coffee, whatever it might be. Making sure people are fed. Food is obviously a very good thing to calm the body and put it out of a flight mode and the sympathetic, and get some food in there, create that parasympathetic rest and digest activity, calm the body down, all that sort of thing. Cigarettes sometimes, anything adding to it, being there in person, repairing misunderstandings, using that, as I just made up, this kind of scale of affinity, being closer to the person, conveying and putting across more of your intention to actually make up the damage and repair is a very good way using that idea of affinity. Okay, so then we come to reality. Providing reality. So reality is essentially agreement. It's the things that are real. You and I can both agree you're watching this and this is a pen. So we have as reality that this is a pen. Now I can say that I'm watching a Zoom chat here on my laptop, but that might be real to you only to the degree that there's a laptop sitting here or something that looks like a laptop to you. It might have nothing on it, but my reality is full and solid, but your reality perhaps can't be to that same degree. So what I can do is I can show you some evidence. I want to increase the reality. Good. There's my laptop. So increasing reality. What are the things that are real? Things that actually exist. So now we go through perhaps a scale of reality. So you're just hearing about it. Maybe there's just words. So then you're hearing about it. Again, just more words. So then you see a photo of it. Okay, a photo. Great. That looks like it's more real. However, these days, you really have to question some things in reality when it comes to photos and even perhaps video. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine the other day was showing me how he placed a video game console with a VR app on his phone in their lounge room on the kitchen table. And he took a photo of it, and really it looked like there was that video game console sitting in their living room. It wasn't, he just placed it in there using this virtual reality sort of type of stuff. But anyway, in general, notwithstanding deep fakes and all that sort of thing, a photo is evidence of something. I'm really sorry that we didn't get the delivery to you on time, but here it is actually. It's arrived in my office and I'm sending it out today. Here's the box. I'm sending it, and good, go on post and then see what the actual registration reference number is, whatever it is. Good, there's the evidence. So that evidence is more reality. And again, a step higher than that, perhaps video, and even then a step higher than that, meeting in person. Good, I thought I'd bring you the book. This is the sample. this is the one that you're going to get. It will actually look like this. Turn the pages, flip them over. That's the actual product that you're going to get, rather than seeing something that's a picture. And I'm not sure how many of you have been victim of seeing something on the computer shopping website and then getting it in reality and it's something quite different. But there you understand the basis of reality. A picture does give some reality, but the object itself you cannot replace. So by increasing reality, by increasing affinity, with communication, you can repair misunderstandings by increasing understanding. Said that the wrong way. Okay, so this book, I want you to, if you haven't read it, get a hold of it. It's called Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought. It contains the basic principles of Scientology and is a fantastic introduction to a lot of these different things that I spoke about, the emotional tone scale, looking at the different levels of emotion, looking at communication, and this thing called the ARC triangle and the relationship it has, and many other basic principles of Scientology, some of which I didn't cover at all. I did mention some things in terms of, the type of people that you're dealing with, understanding and learning who you should be trusting and who you shouldn't, how you exchange with people in business, the different aspects of life in terms of things that you do, things that you are yourself, the titles that you have. Anyway, I'm not going to get into any confusing details, but the basic principles in Scientology are in this book, and pick them up because how they apply to life, and this is the important thing that I want to get across, is that it's not just philosophy for thinking about and saying, well, wouldn't that be wonderful and isn't it lovely? Okay, it's none of that sort of thing. It is actually information that you can apply to your life to help you solve problems. And the number of cognitions that you have as you're reading through and you're seeing how the information can apply to your life. Oh, that could apply this way. The cognitions you have will solve so many problems in so many unexpected areas that you probably will not ever have guessed that something could help with. So for now, I'm just checking for Michelle. Any last questions or originations? I'm just going to check with her. If there's nothing else that we had going on there, I am going to finish off. So I'll just wait for her to send me that message back. No problem at all. Okay, so that was Repair Misunderstandings, more communication, not less, because, as L. Ron Hubbard said, communication is the solvent for all things. So I hope you'll join me for the next webinar. We're wrapping up this series on communications. I'm not sure what we're dealing with next, but just a couple of webinars left on that subject, and then we're going to move into relationships, improving relationships, interpersonal relationships, relationships with your family, what causes them to break down, all the different factors in that. So I hope you'll join me, and as far as Repair Misunderstandings, Shanae for today.